Hello there, I'm Ibby, and welcome to Theaterside Chats, the official podcast for this channel, Cinema Nerd. We have a lot to talk about today. There are a lot of different items of discussion, so let's just discuss cinema right now. And when we're talking about cinema, there is an important distinction that we have to make between roller coaster theme park movies, right? That's one side, and then you also have cinema. Let's talk about cinema, the thing that would make Hitchcock proud, Jean-Luc Godard proud, Stanley Kubrick proud, Orson Welles proud, Michael Bay proud. Let's talk about Godzilla X Kong, The New Empire. Peak cinema right here. Peak cinema. Intricately written, masterfully directed, with what, a 62% on Rotten Tomatoes? 55% on Rotten Tomatoes. This is a disgrace. This is shameful. Everyone should be ashamed. On a more serious note, it is the biggest tentpole blockbuster right now. It is the movie that came out and is doing the best at the box office. In fact, its box office very much exceeded expectation. If we look at the box office, it was 80 million domestic. That is on par with Dune 2. Dune 2, which people were praising as one of the greatest science fiction films ever made, which completely blew up, had some of the biggest stars in the industry, and everybody seems to love it. The quality of the film from Denis Villeneuve himself actually stunned a lot of people. And then here we have, big dinosaur lizard thing and big ape teaming up with an atrocious title like Godzilla X Kong. Seriously, literally anything else. Godzilla and Kong / Kong, Godzilla Kong, whatever. Just don't ship them. It's that simple. Regardless, Godzilla X Kong does the same, right? And now it's propelled this MonsterVerse franchise, this series of King Kong, Godzilla type movies, to become a $2 billion franchise. So the box office here is interesting. Why is this kind of movie making so much money? This is not really precedented. This is the biggest, the best that the MonsterVerse has done financially so far. And I think there's a very simple principle behind it. Number one, the franchise itself is gaining momentum. And two, the industry is gaining momentum. We just had Dune 2. We're still recovering from the Rona. I won't say the name of that virus, but the Rona. So, I mean, what seems to be the case here is that, and also, there is a very dedicated fan base here that is going to care a lot about these MonsterVerse movies, that like the spectacle, that like the VFX, that like the story. Imagine. But yeah, that's sort of behind why it's doing well. But regardless of that, the positive momentum both from the movie environment and the rest of the franchise kind of, stands at odds with how the film has been received. It's currently standing, and, Rotten Tomatoes is not the definitive indicator of a film's quality. It's just a good way to gauge what people thought. From critics, it has a 55%. And the consensus is, quote, "Come to Godzilla X Kong: The New Empire for the sheer monster-mashing spectacle, and stay for that too, because the movie doesn't have much else to offer," end quote. However, we see a very common phenomenon. The audience score is 92%. So why is the audience score this high and the tomato meter 55%? I think there are a few simple causes. I mean, and it's not that complicated. Critics seem like they hate movies sometimes just because they're straight fun, right? And not having seen the movie yet, I mean, I know what to expect going into it. It's going to be a movie with a bunch of CGI, dinosaurs and gorillas wrecking each other with not much substance to it, and probably a story thrown on there just to justify it as a movie and not a series of, vaguely connected VFX shots. But that's also the problem. It's a movie, and it attempts to have a story, right? So the thing is, it's not that, oh, why can't you just have a simple, fun movie? But this simple, fun movie is actively held back by a story that seems like a necessity, right? But it holds us back from having that super fun, rock'em sock'em robot experience of watching dinosaurs and lizards and gorillas fighting. It's not that it has a story and that every movie needs to have deep, complex thematic argument and, super subtle, writing and acting. It's not that. At least not to me. To me, it's because all the things it attempts to do are not fulfilled. Because it has, seemingly, as is the case with the previous films, a narrative shoehorned in as an excuse to get to these big fights, the reason everybody's coming to see the movie. But they are so poor that it ends up detracting. It reminds me of last year, a movie from last year, which has gone completely, dead. Like, radio silent. Nobody talks about this movie anymore. I want to talk about Cocaine Bear. Okay, now hear me out. Cocaine Bear is not that good of a movie. Okay, it's fine, right? We come to see Bear Mayhem, and there's barely any in it, right? But But it's serviceable because the story is not so atrociously bad and dull that it completely rips investment out and it's a boring experience. If that's the case with Godzilla, then we're actively having to sit through junk in order to get through the good stuff. The junk should at least be tolerable enough so where it doesn't mitigate from the good stuff, the, monsters fighting. And then the other thing is not just the fact that it's, CGI spectacle, right? That's not a problem. But it's not staged in a way that's engaging. And Godzilla Minus One from last year has sort of spoiled us in that case because even on a, insanely lower budget, it still managed to deliver that spectacle because of the way it's directed and the way it's staged. It has serious impact whenever Godzilla is on screen, and the story just happens to be good, right? So either have a passable story or a fleshed out story. Don't do neither. Don't try to go a middle route and have a story that ends up, detracting from the good stuff, right? It's like if you have a food and there's, good ingredients in the food and that's at the core of the food, but you have to wade through all this junk to get through it. Either you remove the junk or you make the junk good. Simple as that. But why is the audience score so high if I'm defending the critics on this, right? If I'm defending the 45% of the critics who didn't like the film, what's up with the audience score? Isn't that a better indicator? Well, here's the thing. Critics, because it is their job to see movies, they're not going to like every movie they see. They see movies that they don't like because it's part of that's their occupation, right? Because somehow they decided, a good way to spend your life is yapping about movies. No hypocrisy here. But if you go see a movie as a casual audience member, right, as an enjoyer of the medium, you're doing it because from what you've seen, the movie seems like you will enjoy it. So inherently, if you think you're going to enjoy a movie going in, you're probably going to see the kind of movie that you enjoy, and therefore, you like the movie. All the people who are super snobby about it, who only see the most prestigious indie art house movies premiering at whatever film festival, they're not going to walk into the theater and see the movie. And therefore, their reviews are not dragging down the average. To me, this situation is not that complicated, and there shouldn't be much controversy over it. But there's also the matter of, what did I think of the movie? Stay tuned for that, coming soon on the Cinema Nerd YouTube channel. So what do you think? Do critics need to be so critical and so obtuse about this not having the most layered and complex story? Are our general audience members stupid? Is that what it is? Is there a lore reason? Are they stupid? And is the box office something we should be paying attention to? Is it going to have the legs of Dune 2? I don't believe so. But it is surprising to see. But on a much less cinema note, we have another movie. Next week is the newest film, and from what his recent statements indicate, the last film from director Alex Garland. That being Civil War. Completely tame subject matter here. No controversy whatsoever. It's Civil War. It comes out next week. It's from A24. And it's very ambitious in its subject matter. It's depicting a modern American Civil War. Obviously, if you know your history, the American Civil War took place from 1861 to 1865 between northern states, the Union, the southern states, the Confederacy, bunch of stuff. Abraham Lincoln, 7 years ago, blah, blah, blah. You know, that's the Civil War. But due to recent political tensions between, the two sides of the American political binary, the left and the right and such, you're getting a situation where it's ripe for this kind of movie to comment on the current political circumstances. And I think there is value in that, but only with a huge caution sign on it. A huge caution sign. Because if done poorly, it will be disastrous. One side of the, political binary is going to bash it to no end, or both sides are going to bash it to no end. If there's not, like, the utmost degree of care and caution. The utmost degree. Was Civil War able to fulfill that? Was director Alex Garland and everyone else working on the movie able to fulfill that? According to the critical reaction, the answer is thankfully yes. It's currently holding a 92% on Rotten Tomatoes, which obviously that's not the way to determine if a movie is good or not, but that's just an indicator. That's us fingering the pulse, right? That's us being able to understand how these people feel. And then people here, if you read the actual reviews, they're talking about the ambiguity of it, how provocative and profound it is. And that's the thing I wanted to hear. But there is a more lingering question. I think the movie's probably going to be pretty good. I think it'll be fine. But there is one question. Y'all, it's an election year. November 5th of this year, we have an election. And, of course, your political affiliations, I'm affiliated with neither side of the political spectrum, but regardless, your political views are going to inherently shape how you see the movie, right? Because it seems like it's at least to some extent analogous to current political tensions, right? Although, according to the trailer, some of the plot is focused on Texas and California rebellion. Like, it's Texas and California. Texas being a historically and currently very conservative state, California being a historically and currently very liberal state. How those two ended up on the same side, also with, their interstate rivalry, I have no idea. But, this is, in some way, supposed to resemble real politics. And, inevitably, one side might be favored over the other. And seeing as Hollywood is a fairly liberal place, just generally, those are the kinds of socio-political messages it tends to send. Not that there's anything wrong in getting political in movies for whatever agenda. It's, how well it's done, or if it's done gracefully. Regardless, is this going to incite controversy? Are all the political commentators on the left and the right and the left, going to go to town on this movie? Either empathizing with radical conservatives or playing into woke media propaganda. Are those the debates we're going to be having about this movie? I hope not. I hope not. And the reason I don't think so is because, let's be fair, in this current media landscape, if you don't have something that plays it pretty much completely safe, you're doomed. I don't think Hollywood has you know, the macho, the willingness to explore things that might be divisive, whatever angle they're coming at it from. This is why you see something like at the Academy Awards, where any mentions of ongoing conflicts, even though a lot of the films that were being rewarded were about war, right? And yet, especially in the case of Jonathan Glazer, they're completely avoiding that subject, right? And it's almost tasteless in that way, that you can claim yourself to be, so profound and honorable in how you're depicting and calling attention to these real issues, and then at the same time, pushing those to the side and just not giving them their due respect. So that's the level of cynicism I come with towards Civil War. And I'd like to know what you guys think. Do you think Civil War is going to be something worthwhile? And is it going to incite controversy in this current political landscape? Moving on to something a bit more lighthearted. We all love Spider-Verse, right? What Sony is doing with their live-action Spider-Man adjacent movies is completely atrocious. But what they're doing with animation, with the Spider-Verse movies, Into and Across, and hopefully beyond if that ever comes out, is quite good. And so recently, Sony Pictures Animation's YouTube channel put up a short film called The Spider Within, a Spider-Verse Story. Now, why they did this is actually part of a project called the Kevin Love Fund, which is basically, a pro bono way of recognizing certain artists. It's pretty cool, but the major thing is that they're not having this be a full-length feature film. The budget is very clearly much lower, right? And generally speaking, it's not something that is going to make them much money. They just put it up on YouTube, right? And what the movie is about, and I think it's actually pretty good, is Miles Morales. He just comes home and he has an anxiety attack. And there are a bunch of, crazy visuals and, using all the tropes that and visual techniques that the Spider-Verse movies have pioneered and used to basically communicate how he's experiencing the struggle. And I think that's interesting given how, we live right now, everyone, even despite, our quality of living being way higher up, all of us are depressed, all of us are anxious, all of us are nervous, and all of us are upset, right? And deeply cynical about the world we live in. And I think that's a unique problem that, in some ways is taboo, and in some ways is just seen as a thing and not something that has any merit to it or a way we should solve. I think a lot of us have just become either negligent of that issue or completely content that we're depressed or that we're experiencing anxiety or self-doubt, right? So our media naturally has to reflect that. But what interests me here, not just the fact that this is the subject matter they're going for, is that this is a franchise IP thing, right? That they're just plopping on YouTube and it's connecting to, theatrical releases. Now, I don't think there's any lore here or Easter eggs, but they did just post this on YouTube. So if you see here, this is actually pretty genius. They use the mechanism of having a false spider sense, right? A false alarm spider sense. Miles's spider sense gets activated over nothing. And in some ways, isn't that so reflective of what Spider-Man has always been? Hasn't Spider-Man always been a conduit for something that's analogous and a metaphor for that coming of age, the emotional issues that are relatable to young people, and manifesting that through, comic book storytelling? And I think that's a great show don't tell way of communicating that. And honestly, in resolution, he just goes out with his dad and has a walk. I think in and of itself, the film was done quite well. But do we want to see more of this kind of thing? Would you guys want to see more Spider-Verse, more MCU or DC or any, of these big franchises having these smaller bits of media sort of to um, flesh out the universe, flesh out the characters. Because I think that's what Marvel was trying to do with special presentations a couple years back. Do you all remember that? Special presentations? And it's the kind of thing that they used to do, especially with those one-shots, these little short films that they put together with characters from the MCU. Is this something we want to see more of, or is it a waste of time that is not going to bring, A, any financial benefit, and B, like, we have 5 minutes, are we really going to tell much of a story here? Is this something worth our while? Is this something worth investing in? Way, hey, like, the next movie is still not out yet, why are we putting out a short film? Or alternatively, I think this is nice to have something to hold us over until we have Beyond the Spider-Verse. Regardless, just talking about the movie in and of itself, it has all the trademarks that made Spider-Verse captivating on a much smaller scale. It has that lighting, it has those comic book-like animations, those visual stylings. It had all the things that we love about Spider-Verse, and at its core, it was just a brief character study. That's something I think is good to have. It's something nice. So what did you think of Spider Within a Spider-Verse story? Was it worth your while, or is it just a dud that you don't consider being of any value? Like to know, what do you guys think? Let's talk about James Bond. James Bond is like one of the longest running movie franchises ever. Dr. No came out in, 1962, I think it was. That's a crazy amount of time to be working on movies. To have movies consistently coming out with, at this point, 6 actors having played Bond. You've got Sean Connery, Roger Moore, George Lazenby, Pierce Brosnan, Timothy Dalton, and most recently Daniel Craig, who ended his tenure as Bond with No Time to Die in 2021. And so fan casting and speculating over who the next Bond is and should be is a big thing nowadays. And I think this especially caught fire back in 2022 when John Krasinski showed up as Reed Richards in Multiverse of Madness, because that had been a huge fan cast, right? And it sort of vindicated those sentiments of wanting certain actors for certain roles. And then now it's just going kabam. David Corenswet, a famous fan cast for Superman. He's Superman in James Gunn's Superman now. Even the actors are commenting on how people have speculated for this. I can't even tell you how many Fantastic Four rumors we had. This guy's going to be Fantastic Four. This guy's going to be Mr. Fantastic. This guy's going to be the Thing. This person's going to be Invisible Woman. Like, every single day there would be a new, rumor, a new scoop. Hey guys, Margot Robbie is Sue Storm. Guys, Daveed Diggs is the Thing. Guys, Seth Rogen is Human Torch. I don't know. It was all just a bunch of nonsense. And nonsense is what we experienced recently. A bunch of the major trades and a bunch of outlets started reporting that Aaron Taylor Johnson, right, of Kick-Ass and Bullet Train fame, was going to be the next Bond, had been offered the role of James Bond. So there are 2 things we need to look at. Number 1, is this legit? Is this seriously something? And number 2, is this good? Do we want this for Bond? Is this the direction we want this franchise to go in? After it's had so many different iterations, after the Daniel Craig saga went up and down so much in quality. Everybody loves Casino Royale. That's the best Bond movie. Like, in my opinion. It's a crisp 9 out of 10 movie. It's great. Quantum of Solace is a mess. Writer's strike fiascos galore. Skyfall is really good. Spectre is convoluted and a mess. In No Time to Die is pretty good. Even if, it irritates some Bond fans with the way it portrays the character. So is Aaron Taylor Johnson something we want? Number 1, is this real? Maybe. Maybe at some point in the future, Aaron Taylor Johnson does become Bond. Right? We can't rule out that possibility. But there are 2 things that make me doubt this heavily. Number 1, the historical trend with Bond is that it's an up-and-coming actor from British TV, right? That's what's happened in almost every case, except for Lazenby. That has been the case for Bond. That's where they look. They look for actors who are coming up, the rising stars, not the established names. That's why you can discredit most of these rumors for Idris Elba, Richard Madden. My personal favorite, Henry Cavill. I would have loved Henry Cavill Bond. That would have been incredible. But these aren't something to be taken seriously. But the reports, they were all saying it's happening, that it's rumored. Okay, let's not just headline skim. Let's go a couple layers deeper. Where are they getting the rumor from? The rumor is from the UK-based newspaper. Makes sense, Bond is coming out of the UK. It's a British character. The newspaper that initially reported this was The Sun. Now let's do a quick Google. What does The Sun do? The Sun newspaper. Okay, the US Sun. News, sports, celebrities, and gossip. It's a tabloid paper. It's a bunch of junk. This person posted a picture of themselves in a bikini. This person is still dating this person. This funny thing happened on Instagram. Those kinds of stories. They're the same ones when, with no evidence, accused Johnny Depp of some serious issues, and whether or not he did, that had not been proven. And this is the outlet we're talking about? Okay, what's the Sun source? Oh, we don't know. Someone told The Sun. Is the Sun source legit? No. Is the Sun legit? No. Everybody, please calm down. I feel like I'm going insane here for not believing this. Like, everyone thinking ATJ is on this. Pierce Brosnan was also on it. He was saying, yes, he'd be a great Bond. More on that in a bit. But the legitimacy of this can be completely debunked instantly just by seeing that. So, I don't know. I feel like I'm going a bit crazy there. So, don't just read the headline. Actually, read the story and stuff. Yeah, check your sources. Use MLA or APA citations on your school assignments. I've had enough. Enough. So let's entertain the possibility. Is HEJ going to be Bond? Probably not. But what if he was? Do we like it? I actually do. Hear me out, there are a few things. Most of you probably know Aaron Taylor-Johnson for two roles. Number one, Kick-Ass. Number two, he was Quicksilver in Age of Ultron in 2015. The worst Quicksilver. So where does he show potential for Bond? By the way, he's also Kraven in Kraven the Hunter, which is upcoming. Interpret that as you will. But what makes me think ATJ has Bond potential? Number one, he's got the look down, he's got the suaveness, he's got the charisma. Now, why that's important is because it's super integral to the Bond character that he emphasizes this, fantasy, this male power fantasy of, being super cool and attracting as many women as possible. This frivolous, junk reality that we get to believe in, that we get to see ourselves in the shoes of James Bond of 007 and go on crazy missions. For Queen and Country, or I guess King and Country now. I don't know what's going on with Charles. He might be dead soon. But regardless, that's sort of the essence of Bond. And so if you want to have someone play James Bond, you need to have someone actually inhabit that side. To be super cool. To be the kind of person that people are swooning over and obsessing over, regardless of the fact that he's Bond. And ATJ has that quality. ATJ has that it factor. Now, number two is that through his work, ATJ has actually affirmed himself as a capable actor. A thespian, if you will. And the reason I say that is because of Bullet Train. He's fantastic in Bullet Train. Check him out in Bullet Train. And he's inhabited so many different kinds of roles. He's just had so much range. And so I have pretty high confidence in ATJ that he might actually be able to pull off a good James Bond. And if he is James Bond, or someone like him, early 30s guy, with that manner, with that kind of mannerism, with that kind of impression on the viewer, What does that indicate on the direction of the Bond franchise? What should the Bond franchise's direction be in the first place? And I think what they need to do is they need to go classic. They need to revert away from the serialization of Daniel Craig's Bond, which worked quite well for the most part. But we need something more refreshing. We need something that gives us context and that makes us say, oh, they don't make them like they used to. And that's a common refrain you see nowadays. That was a movie. They don't make them like they used to, right? Isn't that the pinnacle, the core of why Top Gun Maverick was so successful? Because it felt like something we normally don't get. Isn't that why The Holdovers was a smash hit at the box office, not the box office, at the Oscars and award season last year? Because it was that warm, comforting kind of movie that you don't get very often. And so, can we do that not just with chick flicks and not just with family films or wholesome movies? Can we do that with action? Can we have something that's invigorating and brings new life to the franchise while feeling like a classic homage to what came before? I'm almost thinking, and don't call me crazy, right? I might be crazy. Think of La La Land. Hear me out, okay? La La Land, what La La Land does is that it feels fresh, and yet it feels like it's the kind of thing, it has that vibe where it could have come out 80 years earlier, even though it came out in 2016. And on top of that, it's just super well made. If we can have the La La Land version of James Bond, not actually like La La Land, but that kind of iteration, right? Just how La La Land iterated Hollywood classics, iterated upon those. Could we have a new Bond movie iterate upon that? Upon the history of the franchise, the dark and gritty side, the serious side, the Ian Fleming side, the Daniel Craig side, and also the bombasticism, the lunacy, the classic Hollywood feels of Pierce Brosnan and Roger Moore. That's the direction I would go in with Bond. Now, should Christopher Nolan direct it? I don't think so, because Christopher Nolan is going to bring his old thing to Bond. Christopher Nolan should not be the star. Bond should be the star, right? Or you could have Christopher Nolan play Bond. That's a possibility too. But that's the direction I would go in with Bond. I think ATJ would fit nicely into that. And I think he would generally be a charismatic, effective Bond, even if they go more into that serious side like they did with Daniel Craig. So that's my thoughts on ATJ as Bond. Next up. So the movie star as a concept is kind of dead. Like, movie stars, actors in and of themselves, are usually not the box office draw. That's going to be the IP. Or even the director in some cases. It's not going to be the person in front of the camera. That helps, right? That they have drawing power. But they are not the draw. However, one of those exceptions who kind of has been the draw is, of course, Dwayne Johnson, Dwayne The Rock Johnson. And the reason I bring him up is because The Rock has been doing something interesting lately. Something that might, and hear me out, might have the possibility to sort of revitalize the industry's direction. And the reason I say that is because he's doing things that are antithetical to the Dwayne Johnson we've seen over the past 20 years. This movie star who just, what we just saw over the past 20 years is super generic Rock, right? Of him just eyebrow raising, being in action movies that are completely forgettable, building off of Fast and Furious and playing Luke Hobbs in every movie. Nothing great, right? But he's a movie star. He's recognizable. He makes a good celebrity, a good personality. But not an actor who is going to give us captivating performances or be in good projects. That narrative is starting to change. Late last year, after all the things that happened, after the disastrous flop of Black Adam, after years of generic movie after generic movie, it came out that Dwayne Johnson is going to star in an A24 movie about MMA legend Mark Kerr. The Rock is in a serious movie? Sorry, what? The Rock for the first time since like Pain and Gain, is going to be playing a character more sophisticated than, "Hi, I'm The Rock. What's up? Can you smell what I'm cooking? It smells awful." Is that the direction we're going in? So that's interesting on its own. I wouldn't have a whole video about that, right? But then The Rock has been on a TV show recently, and it's not a traditional, serialized narrative TV show. Professional wrestling. He's been on WWE. Of course, his rise to superstardom started in the WWE in the late 90s, in the Attitude Era, with the Nation of Domination, pie eating, eyebrow raising, laying the smack down on these jabronis. That's what made The Rock a star, because he had to just had that factor that made him so engaging to watch. Because wrestling, in the WWE sense of it, isn't about the actual wrestling. It's about having these storylines unfold and these like characters we can latch onto, these personas of the wrestlers. And The Rock has never been as cool as he was back in WWE. Until this year. See, earlier this year, The Rock was going to be in a storyline, in a feud, right, to have a wrestling match at WrestleMania, which is this week. It's the biggest wrestling event of WWE's calendar year, of the entirety of wrestling. And this was shaping up to be a big one. It's in the Lincoln Financial Field in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, sold-out stadium. It's that kind of big event, that Super Bowl level scale. And he was going to be there, presumably in a match against his cousin, who is the current WWE champion, right? Roman Reigns, his cousin. But the execution of it on television was so extreme from fans, from viewers, in support of another wrestler by the name of Cody Rhodes, that The Rock completely pivoted, right? They had a whole press conference in Las Vegas where The Rock did what we call a heel turn. A heel turn, in pro wrestling terms, is when a character transitions from being a good guy, someone you're supposed to cheer, to a bad guy, someone you're supposed to boo, someone who does bad things, right? And The Rock, he kind of embraced that hatred and turned into this character that mixes so much of these different things. His position now on the TKO board of directors, as which is the company in charge of WWE and UFC. Also, his past characters where all these things have happened to make him this star that's become bigger than wrestling, and so he's arrogant and, goes against the fans. Because The Rock's origin story is not one of being instantly beloved. There was a period where he was a generic good guy in an age of 90s, attitude and counterculture that really didn't gel at all. And so The Rock is now playing. I mean, look at this. This is absurd. What you're seeing on your screen right now. This outrageous drip, these Versace jackets, and what it's doing is making The Rock interesting again. He's been bland and generic for so long, and yet now he's willing to get out of his comfort zone, sort of go back to his roots, and play a character that is telling captivating stories in the way only pro wrestling can. Now, is pro wrestling the most serious or dignified form of storytelling? No, absolutely not. But what it shows is that there is opportunity for these celebrities who have built their brands to be, safe and family friendly. The Rock may or may not run for president sometime in the future, right? And he needs his image to be, squeaky clean before he has a political campaign. That's not always been the celebrity approach to politics, but that's certainly been his, to have this brand that can sell a bunch of different products, his tequila or whatever, for Ryan Reynolds to go around with Mint Mobile, or if all of these to help their alcohol brands. Like, that's what they all seem to be doing. Get famous, make money, start an alcohol company. It's strange to me, but that's sort of the ecosystem we're living in, where the movie star is gone, but now they've just become IP. Since IP is the biggest factor in determining who sees a movie, right? How many people see that movie? having that recognizable IP, that familiarity, is the thing that propelled Red Notice to be viewed, even though it's atrociously bad. But what The Rock has shown with A, his A24 deal, and B, his work in WWE, which has been wildly entertaining, what it shows is that they can actually play fast and loose, fast and serious, fast and furious with those personas that they've carefully curated, and do fun stuff that's intriguing and captivating and gripping to watch, while not hurting their whole brand. If anything, propelling their status. So what this has the potential to do, and this is the question I want to leave you with, does this have the potential to revitalize the movie star who isn't just doing the same thing in every movie, but can give you good work and good content, good art with the projects that they're in? Is The Rock paving the way for that? Because after his failures, maybe you should. I think that's the direction The Rock should go in. And I think that's a promising direction that might lead to better art, in my view. His whole power grab of DC, that wasn't going to work. Being in generic action movies and then Jungle Cruise or whatever, that wasn't working. Can movie stars go back to the glory of the past? Can we go back to, back in my day, they were good actors? Can we go back to that? I think that would be quite nice. And I hope that Dwayne Johnson's recent work can sort of set the precedent for that. So what do y'all think of that? That's just an idea I had. These don't have to be taken too seriously. It's just me yapping. But that is all for today's episode of Theaterside Chats. Thank you so much for watching. This is, sort of raw. It's not been too scripted, too well planned out. It's been me just rambling for about 40 minutes. So thank you so much for sticking along for the ride, for, indulging in my yapping. I have a PhD in Yapponomics, and I'm currently showing off that expertise. If you have any suggestions for how I should develop this format, how do I make it better? How do I make it more intriguing, more informative, more engaging to watch, or valuable to watch, please let me know. This is the start of the podcast. This is the start of me doing this style of content that isn't word for word scripted. So please do let me know what you thought of it, what you think of all of these pieces of news. And with that said, please make sure to like, subscribe, hit the bell, share with your friends, etc., etc. Have a great day. I will see you next time.